Good morning to everybody. Welcome to our probably last webinar of 2025, which is hard to believe we're nearly at the end of the year. And thank you for everybody joining us this morning. I know it's a busy time of year, so we appreciate your time to come and learn something with us here at Globe. This is a really interesting sort of subject, I guess, when it comes to kind of stored product pest and different things that will be discussed by James and David today. So it's quite an exciting webinar. This one's actually been pre-recorded. James recorded this because I think Thanksgiving in the US, he did this pre-recording for us. So he recorded this for us last week, and I've watched it twice already, and it's very interesting. So I'm looking forward to the information that James will give us. And then obviously we've got David and Darcy from Bugs for Bugs who'll be able to answer any of your questions at the end of the presentation as well. So if I ask Fiona to change the slide. Just a few offers from us this month. So this is the last day of the BSF offer. So this offer ends today effectively, or I guess over the weekend, any online orders at the end of the month. Spend over $2,000 and you'll get a 15% discount on the current price of Thermidor, HESC, the both Trelona kits, as well as the Trelona bait and a Ciclera WSG as well. So this is a big saving that it's been a good promotion this month. I've seen a huge amount of sales going through on those BSF products for this month. So today's the last day really of this offer. So if there's anything you need to do, get a hold of the branch and get your order in, or order directly online. It'll do the discount automatically for you. I'll grab the next slide. Couple of Globe specials. So we've got a Centricon offer of 7 cartons of the RTUs or 7 cartons of the active rods, and you get a box free. That runs through the middle of next month. And then there's a discount on the Enview products, as well as a draw for a Yeti cooler, which has been sent to all the branches. So I think all our branches are sitting with one of those coolers, and there'll be a draw at the end of the month for that as well. And last of all, just a Black Friday sale. So we've got a Black Friday sale on our own branded Fipronil and Bifenthrin EC and SC. So the box of 4 by 5 litre is down to $7.99 for this offer, and also the Bifenthrin EC and the 20 litre, the SC and the EC is also being reduced for the Black Friday sale as well. So again, reach out to the branches for those. So if there's any of those deals you want to take up, you can get in touch with the guys to get those offers. So I think I'll introduce at the end. I'll introduce David and Darcy, but we'll play the video and we'll get James to he's quite good at introducing himself, and we look forward to this webinar. It's a really good. I've watched this twice already. It's a really good offering from James. So we'll just roll the tape and we'll do the questions at the end.
Good day, mates. I'm just kidding. Hey, today we're going to discuss the mastering of stored product insect management, and we're going to do that with STORGARD insect pheromone and pheromone monitoring systems and CIDERAK IMM mating disruption. Here we go. So first, let's discuss who exactly we are. We are Trece Incorporated, Spanish 13, lucky number 13, if you will. And we're in Adair, Oklahoma, United States. That's a good view of our manufacturing facility there on the grounds. If you were wondering where my office is, it's right where that little dot is, overlooking our greenhouses and the pastures. So we manufacture almost everything you can imagine for our products that we perform here in the United States. So a little bit about me as the speaker here, or the presenter, if you will. My name is James Miller. I've been in the pest management industry for 22 years now, 10 years with an operations company owned by Rollins Incorporated called an industrial fumigant, where we did solely food pest management. I have been with Trece Incorporated now for 12 years, and I am the director of global sales for all professional pest. I also have an associate certified entomology certificate through the Entomological Society of America. And you might be shocked, but I am a classically trained mechanic, and I did work for a Toyota dealership as a Toyota dealer mechanic before getting into pest management. My contact info is also there and it will be available at the end. And just in case you were wondering, that's what it looked like 22 years ago. So as you can see, the stored product insect game is hard on your body. So the next couple slides, we're going to discuss the new technology offerings to our catalog. This is available through your distribution channel like Globe Pest. They're a great partner with Trece Incorporated in the Australian market. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of these products. Any questions, please direct to Globe or myself if I could help. We've got a ton of changes in all of our product offerings. A lot of it is unit of measurement and packaging changes, but in the heart is the technology advancements that we've been making. We're going to cover that in a couple of different products as we go here. This is a quick look at how that packaging will come into Australia. So the first product is the STORGARD 2 Quick Change Ultra Combi. One of the major changes to this product is the packaging, along with the new mono cup lure that contains all of the pheromones and pheromones in that new substrate for release. The second product is our STORGARD 2 Standard IMM Plus 4 kit. The big change here is the use of our CE PVC extruded IMM lure. That is a new technology that followed us from our agricultural division. It allows us to blend and extrude the pheromone lures on specific insects so we can get better packaging and better performance down the line. This next one, our STORGARD Dome Trap Quick Change device. This is an Ultra Combi form, which is the ultimate combination of pheromones and pheromones for crawling insects in a pitfall trap. This is the industry standard worldwide for detection. This product has gone through a lot of technology advancements. The lure, the loading of the pheromone oil, the design of the pitfall, enhancing it, all of that has led to the best efficacious product, and I would say probably generation 4 or 5 of this product that we've seen on the market. It's been greatly accepted worldwide. So this is our new offering, and this is the STORGARD Transporter Open and Use. It's an IMM and cigarette beetle only low amplitude loaded pheromone device, and it is preloaded. But the intention of this started for the coffee and tobacco markets where they monitor in transit containers, trailers, overseas containers, or as a hotspot locator. It's an economical device used for early detection and prevention of bringing infested goods into a facility via the receiving. So this is a big component in the progression of integrated pest prevention that we've seen here in North America, and it is starting to take shape in other countries. This is a new product that came out of our research in the field. We have one more new product here, the STORGARD Open and Use Outdoor Ultra Combi. This, just like the last one, was born from our research and development into the food industry with our collaborators, and it's a way to monitor for feral species of Indian meal moth, warehouse beetle, and cigarette beetle on the outside of structures to gauge their pressure or the potential for them to enter into the facility. This could do a lot with outdoors, and it's a preloaded card that uses the same lure as the STORGARD 2 Ultra Combi Quick Change. It's just a different device intended to be used outdoors. And we have one more new one here, and this one's so new that it's just released at Pest World here in 2025, Orlando, Florida. This is the STORGARD CR Open and Use Quick Change Professional Cockroach Monitor. And before you say what I said about this product when I was first mentioned that we were going to be trying to create something like this, great, another cockroach monitor. And that's exactly what I said. However, after 3 years of intensive R&D, this is the best way of monitoring for German cockroach on the market. We've competitively tested it across the world. The product performs very well, and it is very much akin to pheromone monitoring for German cockroaches. So I imagine this would be a very big benefit for initial detection or for after treatment of a facility to ensure that you've got all of that population under control, or as a way to monitor and steward time and labor. So now that we've discussed some of the products that are on the Australian market, let's get to the root of this educational discussion. What are we trying to do when monitoring for stored product insects? Now, this is no fancy video. I pulled it from YouTube. Anything that's publicly available, why work harder when you can work smarter? But here we have a 1 pound bag of flour, so wheat flour off the shelf, infested with what looks like flour beetles. And why I use this picture is, number one, it made it all the way to social media. Secondarily, we don't know where this became infested. It could have been at the homeowner, at the grocery store, the back room of the grocery store, the transportation to the grocery store from the distribution center, at the distribution center, at the flour mill packing facility, in the flour mill, in the cleaning house for the grain of the flour mill, in the grain storage for the flour mill, or even on the vessel coming to the flour mill itself, and then all the way back to the farmer's farm storage bins. So these insects occur all the way along that line, but what matters is a client received infested product and he's probably not very happy. So now that we understand the problems that we're trying to prevent, let's go with the insect monitoring and the IPM front line. And this is from one of my entomological mentors, Mr. Jerry Heath. He's a great individual. So when we look at this specific triangle here of IPM, we have a couple things to consider: the identification, understanding the pest, and assessing the risk. That's the biggest component we often see failed in the marketplace that doesn't start there. Luckily, you are all listening to an educational talk, so we're sharing this information and we're all gaining knowledge here. But we go from the identification to the sanitation and inspections. Pretty simple, collecting data. We have trapping and monitoring, again, using pheromone monitoring systems, design and exclusion of a structure. We have biological or physical controls, i.e. mating disruption, something that doesn't kill anything, but it does inhibit the life cycle of specific insects. And then the last but not least, and it is not an evil option, is the pesticide. Now, I may work for a pheromone manufacturer now in this life, but I am a fan of the entire toolbox afforded to us by our regulatory process and the other manufacturers. But what we have to really understand is we can't just jump from one all the way to the top. Now, let's use something like termites. You identify it's termites. You do understand that biology, and you've assessed them as they're going to eat some wood. So is sanitation going to solve that? No. Inspections, well, if you have the ID, you can do your inspection to see where the termites are. Trapping and monitoring, yes, there are some ground stations for those specific insects. Design and exclusion, well, if the building was already built, you're kind of past that point, but you could still make that suggestion to a client of modifying the building or designing or excluding barriers. Then we have physical controls. Maybe there's something that could be done in the ground as far as stop points. But you're going to get to that pesticide pretty quick when it comes to termites. We understand this insect and where it goes. Now, if we go to the other side of the story of, let's say, Indian meal moth, well, we can understand that biology, and we're going to. Sanitation, big component. Inspections, you're physically looking with a flashlight and trying to find harborage, can really help. Monitoring is going to steward that time and labor and do a couple of things we're going to cover. Design and exclusion, yep. You could do a lot to help those insects not be in the facility. Mating disruption, it's on the Australian market by CIDERAK IMM. You can use it. Now, it's considered a pesticide by law, but by the worlds of science, it's not a pesticide. It's not killing anything. But you could also use other products, fogging agents, other residual sprays, maybe insect growth regulators, and you can even consider fumigation for this insect. So you can see how the triangle of IPM applies all the way across the board. So I like to use the 4 C's of IPM. Like I mentioned, I am a mechanic 22 years ago, and it applies pretty much everywhere in life. You have to look for the condition, the cause, the correction, and the last is the confirmation. You want to confirm that all of those 3 things that you've done have provided a solution that's adequate for you and your customer. So these are pretty good 4 principles you can use almost all the way in life. Integrated pest management is a managed approach. This has been the standard for a long time worldwide in IPM. I'd like to have a discussion also about integrated pest prevention, which is a cultural change approach. It's often said, one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we could stop these problems from not hitting a food facility or your clients, well, that's a win. Hard part is getting them to pay for the services you could offer. So a lot of times it's, hey, exterminator, hey, bug guy, go spray that for me. When you really should have the discussion of, hey, let's try to keep this insect or this pest out of this facility. Again, that's a cultural change, and it takes time, but you're doing that by attending these types of education seminars. Now, in the past, I used to spend more time on this of the auditing or food safety standards. Essentially, we have the Global Food Safety Initiative, and it's a bunch of different acronym audits that you might find at these food facilities. But all of these were created to harmonize food safety. Realistically, it just became with a whole bunch of other standards. The big component here is that it allows the pest management firm to risk assess the facility and set their program up. So where you used to have facilities that had to have so many devices per so many meters or very specific, now you're the professional, and essentially it's letting the chef cook. You get to write the program and justify it based on data and inspections and their risk. So I highly advise, if you're not aware of these types of audit schemes, to invest in some training, because you can greatly affect your IPM programs at your client sites. Whereas before you were told what to do, well, now you are the professional. You're telling them what should be done and working with your customer. So what does monitoring do? And if you notice, I didn't say pheromone monitoring, because this is all monitoring in general, because you could apply these principles to a lot of different other subjects in our craft. But what does monitoring do? The first thing it does is it offers a detection. Is something here? Period. The next is, how much of that something is here in this environment? That could be your threshold, or an economic way to determine that you need to take an action on a specific commodity. And then the last is verification. And if you're seeing this here, it's kind of like the 4 C's, right? Is something here? How much of something is here? And did I solve that problem or make it better by what I instituted in here? Did the problem come back in the monitoring? That's essentially what we're looking at.
It's science.
That's right. It's just a little bit on the Anchorman. If you're ever familiar with American movies, I found that hilarious. That's Ron Burgundy. And in that quote, he says, it's science. And that's essentially what we're doing. Pheromone monitoring systems span every market you can imagine, the proverbial farm to fork, right? So think of monitoring systems as far as stored products from homes, grocery stores, distribution centers, food factories, vessels that transport food, and even the farms that store, harvest, and manufacture that food. So it is all throughout our process. Pheromone monitoring, the biggest benefit is you're using this because it's working 24/7. You don't pay for things unless it stewards time or labor, gives you an advantage, or points you in a direction. You don't use these because James has 2 kids and wants them to have a good college education someday, and you want to make sure he makes money. That's a joke. You use these things because it stewards your time and your labor. That's why you're using these products, and they're there all the time. You may only be at a food account for a couple hours a day, maybe once a week. But these monitoring systems, just like your insect light traps and your rodent control devices, they are omnipresent, working because you put them into a proper situation to steward your time and labor when you come back. So a little definition on pheromones. We're going to move a little quick through some of this stuff, but it's good to cover. So they are chemical secretions, usually by the female, sometimes the male. In our world, it's almost always the female secreting that chemical compound out. It is how they communicate, and it's their intranet, if you will. And it does modify the insect's behavior to do certain actions. The different kinds of pheromone and caromone attractants that we have. Pheromones, first of all, come from the insect. Caromones are food or other lures that draw an insect in. So think of if you're using cockroach gel baits or rodenticide, those have pheromones that bring that pest to the device or to the product to feed on to then cause the insecticidal action. So those are two different components we want to talk about. It's good to understand that. Indian meal moth has a pheromone. Sawtooth grain beetle uses a pheromone. There's an example for you. Now we have the alarm pheromone. Let's say honeybees release, telling them to sting the person closest to their hive. We have a trail pheromone in the case of ants, like the species of pharaoh ant, that if you adulterate the trail, you'll actually bud the colony and have more of a problem.
Rev,
Then we
you
get
want to
into
have
our
lost
world,
audio, I think?
aggregation pheromones. The best way to describe it for these flower beetle, it's better here than where they are. Or here's where the party is. Let's come hang out. And the last one, which is the strongest call, is the sexual based pheromone. And that is where the female is actively calling in a male. The male is coming in to consummate and create a progeny and repeat their life cycle. If we can manufacture sex or aggregation based pheromones, that is the best. The next we have here is monitoring benefits, and there's a ton of benefits. There's pretty much the only draw is it costs some money and it's some time. But the biggest things that I look to here are environmental stewardship, reducing labor and treatments, and you just get more improvement out of your entire pest program that's available. Some of the pheromones on the commercial market, if you look right here, IMM +4 means you have 5 species covered under that one. For beetle pheromones, there are the ones currently available on the market that we market. And the last is our broad spectrum attractants of our Dome Ultra Combi. There's a ton of insects. It's like 25 plus insects. They are listed on the products as well as our website. But this dates to a journal entomological study back in 2008 that detected these insects in 8 Midwestern US feed mills. So now let's go through our checklist, which is the primary monitoring steps. This is the best way to write a standard operating procedure outside of using AI systems, which is phenomenal, by the way. Just check your work. But this is how you're going to actually set up monitoring systems program for your clients. Identify that insect, learn the biology. Select the systems that fit the biology and those insects. Detect your timing and placement of when you're going to put them out. You're going to distribute the systems as the manufacturer tells you, or your pest partner as a distributor like Globe. You're going to retrieve that data and you're going to record it. Big component there. If you do all this work and don't record that data, why did you bother doing it? Maintaining the system per the manufacturer's guidelines. There's a lot of technical bulletins and instructions. And then the last but not least, if not the most important, is analyzing that data and taking action to change your program. If you just keep counting bugs to count bugs and don't do anything different or make recommendations to your client, why are you wasting your time doing all of this? So at the end of the day, this is the most biggest component, and we're going to cover all of these things in detail. First is insect biology, and we're going to cover a couple of them, but for time and effort here, you can use your Google Kung Fu and discuss some of these insects or even enter it into an AI and it'll give you a whole data sheet on them. But here we have the Indian meal moth, brown banded, very distinct coloring. As it gets older, its scales do fall off and it loses some color. Here we have the red flower beetle, which is capable of flight. Again, there's a bunch of different species of flower beetles. We have a granary weevil here, which is incapable of flight. Down here, we have what some of the grain industry calls brand bugs, or these are Cryptolestes species. This is actually a flat or rusty grain beetle. And on the bottom right, we have lesser grain borer and a larger grain borer, two different species of boring insects. Unlike this talk, they are boring. So the Indian meal moth, a little bit about the biology and life cycle. What I like to focus on is, does this insect as an adult consume food? And the Indian meal moth does not have mouth parts to do that. So the protein in its fat body, after it goes through its pupation cycle and emerges as an adult, that's all it has. So it's a limited amount of life that this insect can live, which makes it great for mating disruption because it has a very strong sex pheromone. I like to look right here at the adult lifespan. And again, this can vary greatly, but 6 to 14 days on average. The big component here is 3 to 4 days after eclosion, which is meaning the female has birthed out of her cocoon or pupation case. Uh, she's going to be pretty much sterile at the 4 to 5 day mark. So every day we delay her from finding a female, she has less protein or ability to create a successful progeny. That's a big component from this insect. This is a video again from YouTube, why work harder when you can work smarter, but it shows a pair of mated individuals right here. As you can tell, the female is larger than the male, and then you can see some of the larvae also wandering. Free tech tip of the day here. The difference between moth and beetle larvae is similar to a caterpillar and a grub. So if you think of a grub, which is beetle larvae, the front pronotum or front quarter will have legs, the rest will not. It will drag its body. And if you think about moth, which would be more like a caterpillar, it's going to have legs all the way down its body. So if you're dealing with larvae in a food situation that you think it's a stored product pest, if you could see the legs all the way down the body, it's a moth. If they're only on the front quarter or so, it's most likely a beetle. This is another video from YouTube, and this is an injured female, and that's her ovipositor, and those are her eggs that she's dropping because she's been injured and she's dying. You can see how tiny that ovipositor is and how tiny it looks like specks of sand. So very, very small amounts of egg, and she'll spread them out 10 to 20 different spots. Big overlook on Indian meal moth. To go to pupation, the final instar before pupation, they will wander away from the food site. So when you understand the biology of this insect, you need to look up, down, and all around the facility, because if you miss the pupation cases but remove, let's say, infested rice, and then the next time they put new rice back, these become adults, they get mated, they drop the eggs on the new rice, you get a call back, hey, the rice is infested again. And it's lather, rinse, repeat. We constantly have that problem. So understanding the biology of these insects is not as cumbersome as reading a malice manual or something like that. Again, I've made mention to the internet, Google, AI, ChatGPT, all that stuff. You can get a lot of good information real quick from these sources, so you can really know what the biology of a specific insect is and where to attack. Never overlook the ability from these larvae to chew out of or into packaging. And yes, if you do put this under a microscope, you'll see chew marks similar to rodent activity. You can tell if they chewed into a package or out of a package. And this was in a retail area, and we're going to talk about this a little later. Next, we have the red flower beetle. It is capable of flight, unlike its sister, the confused flower beetle. It does live a long time, as you can see here. You have a good length of time in the adult lifespan here, and they are also very strong-lived, and they do consume food. So it's a lot tougher of an insect to control than, let's say, the Indian meal moth. It's also an aggregation pheromone, so it's not a sexual-based pheromone. The good news is the Dome quick change product does a heck of a job monitoring for these insects. The bad news is if they're there for a while, and a lot of sanitation, maintenance, and strategic pest applications can have to happen. Here's another image of red flower beetle on some flower that are just moving around in a petri dish. As you can see there, some of them fall over, then they come back up. Some might be dead, who knows? But they're very slow moving, not very dynamic insects. And that's why the monitoring systems are very specific with how we manufacture them. Not all are created equal. So talk to your distributor about which products that you can perform better and which ones they prefer to work with. And then here's another video of the insect trails in a flower bakery facility. And those are all larval cast skins from the flower beetle. And that's an ideal sanitation problem that's overlooked. So these are the kind of things that pheromone monitors can point to, although 2 eyeballs can probably find this, as it did for my friend here in the bakery markets. And then this one came from YouTube as well. It's one of the few ones of seeing red flower beetle take flight. I like this video because a lot of people will say one can fly, one can't. Yep, that's true. And over the course of my 22-year career, I've maybe seen them fly 5 to 6 times in person, and I've dealt with red flower beetle a lot in my career. The humidity, temperature, population has to be perfectly right for them to want to take flight. Again, they don't want to fly if they're in a happy situation where they're at.
Of Loveland is promising action from the city in response to the infestation of red flower beetles. This is a follow-up to the coverage we brought you Monday.
Residents went to the city council earlier this week pleading for the panel to help stop the bugs in the area. Some of those residents told KCBD they're everywhere in their homes, in the pantry, in the carpet, on their furniture, and even in their beds. Now, in a Facebook post this evening, Mayor Barbara Pinner says the city is moving forward with a plan.
We hear you, she writes. The post acknowledges the attack and says the city is working to locate the source. Now, residents blame it on the grain company right across the highway. Mayor Pinner says she met with state officials to learn about the pests and says she hopes to pass that on to residents so they can better fight off the bugs. She says the city will remain diligent in finding a long-term solution.
So I like that video because we were involved in every facet, and that's an entire town infested with red flower beetle because of a lack of successful pest management at an almond hull processing site that received California almond hulls to turn them into pig feed or cat litter. So it tells you how dynamic these insects are and how they were able to infest an entire town in Texas. Now we're going to talk about the selection of systems. It's pretty simple. You want them to be efficient for the target insect, easy to assemble and replace. You want them to be disposable and or permanent. So you need to think about what styles of devices you're using. They need to have efficacy. They need to be doing what you want in that environment, and they need to be backed by a manufacturer's technical field support. People that you could talk that come from the industry that can answer questions or give you advice and lead you in the proper direction. Should someone like myself not be able to answer that question, I probably know someone that can. Now we're dealing with the timing and placement. This one is again arbitrary, but I would say there's no time better than now to monitor for stored product insects. But you get a new client, that's a time. Changes to any internal process. Maybe they manufactured cardboard and that's all they've done, but now they're going to start manufacturing some sort of a spice blend for barbecue. Well, that's a change to the process. Spices bring insects. Maybe we need to change and put a monitoring program in. If they've added new susceptible products into certain parts of the area of the facility. Also, for 24/7 prevention and detection, we have had cardboard manufacturers with Indian meal moth problems that declined a monitoring program because they didn't have pests. Well, it turns out they take reclaimed cardboard that contains volatiles and some of the progeny, and they're essentially turned into a breeding site with no food, but they did have to have monitoring. So don't think of it as if there's just no food there, maybe I don't need monitoring. But if it's a commercial site, it's a good chance to consider those kind of things. Now we have the distribution of the systems. This is where we can have a little more discussion. In general, the hanging trap should be where a human could reach 1.5 to 2.5 meters on average. When we're placing these inside of a building, we're looking for a grid-like pattern. Essentially, we want overlapping grids, 9 to 15 meter spacing on average. These are in principle. In practice, if you can't get paid for this, or the client does not physically have enough spots to put them, well, then you can't do this because it's just physically impossible. But there's a lot of ways to achieve this stuff and use these products to steward your time and labor. But that's for IMM, cigarette beetle, and warehouse beetle, 9 to 15 meter overlapping grids. That's essentially what it should look like in a proper warehouse environment based on space. Those are Indian meal moth monitors placed in a warehouse. When it comes to beetle monitoring, we want to put them on the floor, ledges near the ground, near bales, super sacks, pallets, maybe in a pre-positioned or attractive location. Again, these are pitfall devices that have to interact behaviorally with the insect along with the sense of pheromones and pheromones to attract them. And it does use a suffocant, which is a pheromone oil, which is also an attractant. Some of the examples of spacing are very similar, but for flower beetle, sawtooth green beetle, drugstore beetle, weevil, cigarette beetle, 3 to 9 meter spacing on average with overlapping grids. Again, it's a tighter group because we're dealing with pheromones, not pheromones. Pheromones are a biological secretion from the insect that pheromones of food or other chemical lure. So we really need to understand that when we look at these and how we space them. So where to put them? Behind racking, next to expensive things that if they smash the dome, they also smash the, let's say, the compressor for the warehouse. I'm being a little bit facetious, but I was always a bit of a place things where other things cost more money if they crush them. Also, the two-legged pest problem is a legitimate thing. You do need to talk to your customer, and they need to understand these devices have to last so you can collect that data. They are paying for them after all. And I'd be remiss to say that when we came out with the quick change line in 2013, it was an advancement that kicked butt in the market. The problem is when you give anyone in the market something they could reuse and just use a rebate tray on the bottom of that, boy, sometimes they forget to replace the actual dome itself on a period or environmental basis. So here we have a couple of different things where this is a spice facility where this is covered in a spice oil. And this was not detecting cigarette beetle anymore. Number one, they were misusing the replacement cycle for this product. Number two, it's covered in oil and adulterated. If the insect doesn't want to go in there or you adulterate or spray it with an insecticide, it's no longer going to monitor. Here's an example of mold and food debris building up, and here's another one of food debris on the lid. Again, the bodies itself were meant to last for a little while, but you have to use your own sound judgment and replace these on a frequency that meets your standards and the clients. Because I can tell you, I've gotten these phone calls where we weren't having performance. They know Trece Incorporated and STORGARD is a performance brand, and I have to ask for pictures. And when I get these, I go, that's a service frequency problem. They're not changing out the lure tray properly, or they're not servicing the device by changing out the dome every now and then. So this is something that you could easily preempt in the field by instituting this in your program. But improper maintenance is a thing. Now, we talked about some of the outdoors trap that we have now. Let's go through some of the data. And this, of course, is the United States. But here we have cigarette beetle and warehouse beetle data on the outside of food facilities. And as you can see here, we have different styles of traps. So we catch a ton of these insects in certain areas of the country. So if you don't know what's going on outside of a food facility, number one, you don't know. So how do you assess that risk? Number two, you could easily have a problem. In the case of this warehouse beetle, there's a ton of insects that could be gaining entry that you don't know about. So in the world of audit compliance, you could tell an auditor, we monitor the outside periodically throughout the year. We compare that to the inside, and that way we can make risk assessments. Maybe when we have to make treatments or suggestions for sanitation or maintenance of the facility on the outside to prevent these problems from getting in. This is a big component. That's why we came out with this new device that's a ready to use, open and use product. So let's talk about how many pheromones do we really need in a monitoring program. This is really good for operations and sales folks. So how to plan a program. I've often been asked this a long time in my career. How many do I really need? And my answer has always been, it's tough to tell you because it's money, it's the size of the building, it's the environmental layout of the building. There's a ton of factors that are there. However, I've come down to this realization that I can give you kind of some guidance here. So first and foremost, IMM, CB, WB are all sex pheromones. Each one of those devices is going to cover about 225 square meters. And then for all of your flower beetles and other crawling insects, about 81 square meters of coverage. So you could do some quick math on a facility and see a starting point. Now, again, this isn't a law, this is a principle, right? Not in practice. So in practice, you might not be able to put that many out, or they might not be able to afford that many. So you can still modify this, but this is a starting point to give you somewhere you should be. So let's take this as an example of demonstration. This is a pasta maker in rural Ohio. Yes, that's a real facility. They made egg noodles and they were quite delicious once we solved the pest problem. So here's a layout of that facility, and you'll be shocked, as I mentioned in my bio when we started, I was a mechanic and I've been in pest management for 22 years. I don't make pasta. So I had to ask this facility, how do you make your pasta? Ingredients come in, they're stored here. Batching, making, cutting is here. Dryers for the pasta, more dryers. Final packaging into the warehouse, back out the loading dock. There you go. I now know how to make pasta. So I know some of the risk areas. Trailers coming in, some of the ingredient storage, all of the manufacturing, every one of these dryers touches pasta, but the biggest is the packaging, bagging, and scaling area, because if I can keep insects or adulterants out of the final product, that's a clean product that we could sell for human consumption. Then it goes back in the warehouse in that package and back out the door. So now we know how this essentially works. So let's recap this facility. It's a pasta facility. That's the square meters, 2090.32. Historical records show Indian meal moth and red flower beetle. They did not have a current pheromone monitoring program when I assessed this. They were on the 3 times a year Methogas 100, which is methyl bromide program, and they were just fumigate every couple of months, and that was their program. And that worked for a long time until the government took that product away. That caused a problem. So the answer, how many do we really need for coverage? Hanging style and a floor style. 9 monitors with IMM lures, and that's our math. And then the floor, we need 25 flower beetle monitors with lures. So this obviously was way back before Quick Change came out. Now you can use pre-baited devices that are a lot simpler. So how'd that look into the facility? There's our placement of our hanging traps. There's our placement of our domes. Again, we have a lot of domes here, but we have a flower beetle issue that they're worried about. And as you can see, where these are placed is everywhere the environment lets me. That's a roof pole support system. That's a mezzanine area that they swore they never store any ingredients up there. But when I went through my risk assessment, they had a pallet of spice blend actually stored on the mezzanine because they ran out of space. So I said, we're going to put a monitoring system up there. And sure enough, I'm glad we did, because it did find some problems. But you can see the layout of the facility. It's heavy where I can go. And these things are meant to move. So if this ends up being a bad spot, you can move it over here. You can move it to the wall. These are not permanent fixtures that once you place them down, they have to be there. Retrieving your data is very simple. Weekly seems to be the standard. When we talk about data retrieval, it's counting the devices and counting up, or however you're told to do that in your company. There's a lot of different options. Recording your data, electronic seems to be the way of the future. However, there's nothing wrong with an Excel sheet and printing and putting it into the program. Maintaining our systems, this is one we really want to spend some time on. So I'm going to give a general overview because every product has a technical bulletin, and your distributor, Globe, does have access to those to let you know how to use these products. In general, 4 to 8 week intervals are what we're recommending for most products in a food facility. Examples on that would be flour milling, food processing, 4 weeks. Clean warehouse or retail, probably 6 to 8 weeks. If you're only monitoring for IMM +4, it might be 4 to 8 weeks. Here's the deal. We test these products outdoors in high heat and humidity in Oklahoma. We know what the lures are capable of. That's why we could write these standards. However, you're putting these into food facilities that we don't know what it looks like. It could be 120 degrees in a sifter room for 12 hours every day, or heck, 24/7, where you might have to replace them sooner, and I could never predict that for you. That's why our packaging doesn't give you marketing gimmick terms. We don't say things like lasts up to 90 days. We say the environment dictates it's up to the professional pest management company. So we got your back, but you need to fall within our line for these monitoring systems. There are an expiration on them. They do need to be replaced on a certain frequency based on the environment. And you may have to assess that to change that year to year or every 6 months. You may realize, man, these aren't working so good at 12 weeks anymore. Maybe we go to 10-week replacements because something changed in the environment. Again, there's a lot of leeway in some of these products that we have as far as the maintenance. Secondarily, you should be changing them when your replacement cycle is up, or if they're extremely dirty or full of insects. If there's no more room to dance on the dance floor, you need to change the device out. The dome trap body does need to be replaced on some frequency to ensure proper efficacy. This is a very big component of our dome product. If it becomes adulterated, you will lose efficacy and performance of that product, regardless of putting a new lure tray in. If you adulterate that surface, there could be major problems with the insects not wanting to enter it. That's why every now and then, based on your facility, you should change out those domes. I do not recommend cleaning them with soap and water. There's some specific properties we do to the dome to slick surfaces so insects can't escape. And if you washed it with soap and water, number one, you may be putting a scent onto the dome. Number two, you're also removing some of that product that we've applied to make it more of a harborage to not get out of that pitfall. You can add oil to the floor monitors, but I would say if that's needed, you may need to adjust your frequency. But there are some high heat, high humid, or high dust environments that will saturate the oil, and you could purchase that oil from your distributing company. You could actually add a couple drops every now and then if you wanted to. Most pest management firms aren't doing this because time is money, so they're just amending their service frequencies. Insect removal is an option. I never in my career saw this until I went to Puerto Rico in the United States, and they were pulling insects off of glue, which I argue probably took hours a day that you're paying a professional pest management person to do. That was just ridiculous in my mind as a former operations manager. Also, where are you putting the bugs you're pulling off? So insect removal is an option. I would just replace the device on a frequency or count up to where the point of the replacement cycle is. So if you had 5 this week, 5 next week, you have 10 total when you report the 5 new. Kind of simple to do that way. But at the end of the day, manufacturing guidelines should be followed. Whatever product you're using, you need to ask the manufacturer or your distributor for what are the principles of this monitoring? How do I maintenance this? Analyze our findings and take action. This is a big part at the end here. You spend the precious time and money collecting this data. If you fail to use it, so does your IPM program. And I love that statement because it's calling a shot at our industry, but it's necessary because if we're going to take this data in, we're the pest professionals. We have to be able to give this advice back to our customers. It's just like using a scan tool on a vehicle. It's telling you all the problems. It collects the data. What does the mechanic do with that data, right? So we have a perfect grid of pheromones, and let's say this food warehouse, and in this grid we have an occasional low capture at the red spots. So here we want to tighten the grid or inspect around the red spots. We don't want to touch these because they're not alerting us to any problems. Maybe we delay any treatments, but we continue to monitor around there. The next week we come back, now we have a localized high capture with low capture elsewhere. Again, we could inspect and tighten the grid. We could look for problems. We could remove certain product we could find. They can do cleaning duties. Maybe there's spot treatments that we could be making on here. Maybe it's removing stuff for trailer fumigation or discarding that we find infested. In the end, we continue to monitor. Now we come back to next week, and essentially it's a problem everywhere. Almost every device has a high level of capture. What do we do? And this is where I say we need a kill step or we need a program restart. So we can do inspections, but we're going to be doing a lot of cleaning and removing. We're probably going to be doing some sort of a treatment. Is it mating disruption? Is it insecticidal fogging? Is it fumigation? Is that even possible? A lot of things to consider there. But at this point, you're just counting bugs to count bugs. You're not actually telling yourself where the problems are. This is more of a fighting fire with fire. And I like to put this one out here, and we're getting towards the end, but I thought this is good to cover, is monitoring systems should tell you something that you don't already know. And this is a retail pet store in the United States. But when we look at here, the big activity right here, 11 and 12. And I ask a lot of folks, what would you say the products in a retail pet store would be? And the answers are pet food, bird seed, raw hides, treats for animals, dogs, cats. And I'd say those are all good answers. That's not it. There's our bird food, which is a problem. This is our back room, these three. Oh, by the way, this is human food right here in this area. Excuse me, not human food. Dog and cat food. I guess it could be human food at the end of the day. It is food safe now to that standard in the United States. But 11 and 12 is cat litter. There was an organic wheat and wheat germ-based cat litter on the market that was super infested by IMM, but no one ever put a monitor next to it until we did our research study where we just randomly placed monitors and found out that was a problem. It led to an international recall and a repackaging of this product line just because it was cross-infesting the whole facility. So little things like that, monitors should point you in a direction. It told us a problem we never knew we had. So Indian meal moth mating disruption, I wanted to cover this briefly. Essentially, we're going to go over some of the key points here. What is mating disruption? What does it do? What does it not do? So the modes of action that I akin this to as well, sensory overload. This is essentially arrestment. There is so much pheromone put into a facility that you arrest the insect where he no longer wishes to fly and seek that male. Secondarily is false trail following, although what we're learning on modern scientific research that we've published, along with our United States Department of Agriculture, is it's not so much of a thing in stored products, the false trail following after the first couple weeks. So the big mode of action is really right here, and then right here on the bottom, delayed or denied mating. Every day we could delay a male from finding a female, we get 20 to 25% less fecundity rate, and that's the successful fertilization of eggs in the female. So at day 4 to 5, even if the male finds the female, there's no babies. CIDERAK IMM is fully registered on the Australian market. There's the globe product code up there. You guys have access to the small dispenser, and essentially it is an extruded polymer dispenser with a 6-month cycle or season of the moth. Again, you could read the label, organically certified in the United States. I don't know how that applies to Australia, but we do have that certificate here. And this is the organic certification that we do have in the United States. So now that we've covered what mating disruption is, let's go to the next one of how does it work. So to tell you how mating disruption works, it's quite simple. There's a female on some food. She's in a plume position, releasing her pheromone into the air. The male is locating that, trying to find her and successfully recreate the progeny. Next thing we go to is the use of mating disruption by placed properly by the label into the facility, and that male can't find her or does not try to find her, and we get a population drop. And every couple of weeks we do that, the insects have less and less of a population. Initiation and use of this product is quite simple. It's a very easy label to read. I do suggest reading labels. That's kind of the label is the law. So we want to follow that. We want to educate yourself and your client. The biggest issues we've seen is the client doesn't understand what this is, but the pest manager does. So education and managing expectations are a key component of mating disruption, and it brings you closer to your client and a better relationship. You want to have monitoring systems at least 4 weeks before. You need to have a gauge of performance and efficacy. Or you can use your eyeballs or what they're seeing, but I would say having monitoring systems and hard data is better. Evaluate the capture levels. How many insects do you apprise into that facility? Any of the historical data you may have, say this is a new customer to you, you're able to look at that new old data and assess how bad the problem was before you took over. Obtain the cubic meters of the entire structure, length, width, height, the true ceiling height, the true width, everything included underneath that roof line. If there's freezers, coolers, offices, you have to include the cubic footage because this will equalize with the volume of space and the pheromone chemistry goes everywhere. That doesn't mean you put the mating disruptant dispensers in a freezer, in a cooler, in the offices. What you need to do is put them in the main facility and account for the volume that they're going to displace. So the real cubic meters of the entire structure, no load factors removed, no ceiling height, the whole total true value. Application rate that's on the label. Make your application and then monitor your treatment after. Even though this is IMM pheromone and we're mating disrupting it with IMM pheromone, the monitoring systems still do work quite well for detecting the insect and pointing you into new problems or upcoming issues inside of packaging or products. So to reiterate, we want to get a calculate complete and proper volume in cubic meters. We want to select an application rate on that label and distribute the dispensers in a grid-like pattern. At the end of the day, that means what it means. We don't need to overthink the distribution of these dispensers. You can group them. I like to use the keep it simple method. If I have 100 dispensers to put out and there's 10 poles in a facility, 10 per pole, I'm done. It looks like a grid. That's all we're worried about. The biggest things we can't mess up are the calculation of the volume and the application rate. As long as we can get the dispensers out, problem solved. We do also have a calculator that's available through your distributor, and this is simple. Put your cubic meters in here, and it will give you all the different label rates that are out there. And this is for the this is the small dispenser, I believe. Yeah, the single. This is actually a large Amazon warehouse that was treated, and you can see the size: 1.359 million square meters. That thing is huge, 377.56 packs of product. So we are using this through the pest management market in huge facilities now that we've never had the chance to before, because Indian meal moth's becoming more of an issue. Applications is as simple as hanging a piece of rubber, as you can see here. That's Dr. Lindenmeyer. She was with her second child there. We're hanging this out, and we have dispensers on zip ties, different ways of doing it. It's endless. We do offer this adhesive hook as well, should that be something you want. And then evaluation and interpretation, and this is where we're getting to the end, and I'm trying to make sure I don't go too far over. This is a New Orleans coffee warehouse, and while the orange is a different product not available, it's an IMM spray or fog mating disruptant. What I really want to focus on here is the blue side that we have here. This is the control. So we have over 11,000 moths in 1 week, and if we come down here, we're under 500. Now, this facility is not doing anything else at this time, but this gray control site is fogging with a pyrethrin and growth regulator every 7 to 14 days. And you can see it's not doing much. But when we have mating disruption down here and we put it out very early, and that's a warm part of the United States for us, and also humid, well, you can see the control of this product comes down. So after the research trial, they used this product commercially through their vendor. So at the end, we want to be prevention based. That's the key component. If we can stop the problem before it becomes a problem, well, it stays somebody else's problem, not yours. Also, you're winning at your client. So assess the risk of everything you can have. Follow any escalation procedures. We have integrated pest management, and then we have integrated pest prevention. Try to be both. And the risk assessment can change your program. Any of the control actions, we have location and removing of infested items, trailers, container treatments, isolation, full treatments of the facility. Again, what are your risk-based thresholds and what are your economic or risk-based controls or concerns from your client? At the end, we want to continue monitoring. So I've spoke long enough. I always like to leave a quote at the end of my lectures, and this is from the Gorin no Sho, or the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, famous Japanese samurai. Tons and tons of combat mutual duels, and he never lost. So he wrote a book that's pretty amazing on all the things he learned in life. But one of those quotes is, "Do nothing that is of no use." So I would like to think that after we discussed monitoring here and mating disruption, that we're going to do things that are of use to us. Again, if you have questions, please let your distributor know. This is how you can get in touch with me, jmiller@trece.com. There is my phone number for calling or text. I know you guys are on a different part of the world, so I'm talking to you usually in the future. As you're hearing this, we are on our Thanksgiving holiday. That's why I'm recording it and I am not live. I apologize for that. I do love to be live for these webinars to interact with you guys and girls. And but at the end of the day, if you got any questions, please let the hosts know, and I'll be available to answer any of those at my leisure. Appreciate your time and stay safe.
That's great. Thank you to James for that. And I'll just quickly introduce you to David Loxley, who looks after these products here in Australia. I'll let David quickly introduce himself, and then we'll take any questions if there's any questions. You're on mute, David. We hear you now.
Got you. I think I'm live now.
Yep, we got you. Fire away.
Thanks very much to everybody for being on the webinar. And just to give a real brief background as to Bugs for Bugs, we're an insectary company at heart, but we also do products which facilitate pest control without relying fully on traditional chemistry, although we're not anti-chemistry. So we are involved in agriculture, and we're involved with the PCO market exclusively through Globe. A lot of the technology that is quite new to the PCO market, has been used in commercial agriculture for a lot of years, and that's how we got involved with the PCO market, again through Globe. So available for any questions, and also Darcy Filmer is available as well to help with any questions you may have.
That's great. Just quickly, Fiona, I don't think there's any questions I see in the chat. I'll just check the Q&A in the chat. There's no questions there. If we can unmute all the mics, if anyone's got any questions, just stick your hand up or just shout out. We'll take any questions. David will be able to answer those for you. Sometimes they're quite shy, David, but other times they're not. So we'll see how we go. No questions from the floor. Double check no one's got their hand up. Are the microphones unmuted, Fiona?
Yep, everyone should be able to unmute themselves.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. Just as long... Oh, yeah, I can see that now. That's awesome. That's cool. It was quite comprehensive, what James went through. But yeah, if you've got any questions, just shout out. If there's any questions you have about facilities that you're working on or anything that you're looking to quote, please reach out to myself first of all, and we can ask David and James Darcy for advice on that. Any of the products that we have talked about today. Some of the new products, obviously, we're looking at taking some of those new products, what fits for the Australian market. We'll take some of those new products. I think certainly the German cockroach monitor, I think looks quite a promising product. So it's something that we'll look to bring into our portfolio. But yeah, if there's any feedback or questions, please let us know. We have run slightly over time. I knew that because I'd listened to James a couple of times. I knew it just ran over a wee bit. We usually do about maybe 40 minutes of content. And that was about 55. But they gave me permission to take any of the parts out. But I thought all of it was very important for our customers to hear that. So I'll just quickly check, make sure there's no other questions in the chat.
You there, Mark?
Yeah. Who's that? Hamish?
Mark, it's Hamish from Flick.
Hey, man, how you
just
doing?
a question on the SIDERAKs. Good, thank you. The SIDERAK interrupters, we've got them in a couple of facilities, and the customers do sort of look at them and say, well, it's just a piece of cardboard with a dot on it. Are they able to put into some sort of a device that looks a little bit more professional without interrupting how they work?
Yeah, you've got the domes out on that job, Hamish?
No, these are the SIDERAK interrupters.
Oh, the SIDERAKs. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're just a little piece of cardboard with a round button on them. When you put them onto, you're paying what you are paying for them as a customer. They don't really look like anything like too special.
Yeah.
Just wondering if they were put into some sort of a holder or something, because it's going to affect the way that they work too much.
Yeah, I'll pass that to David. Did you hear that, David?
Thanks for that question. Originally, they did actually market a holder for the IMM product, and then of course you attach the holder, which did limit their position options. What you're referring to is actually the trial product for cigarette beetle, which we're moving through the registration system at the moment. That style of product, having a dot on it, and it is quite small. Also boringly simple. It's just a special plastic matrix which we dispense, usually using cable ties. It's your choice. You can upgrade the presentation depending on the needs of your client. Make sure that there's still air movement through and around the actual dispenser to facilitate release of the pheromone. But sure, if you feel you'd like to make them more obvious for whatever reason, you can do that.
Yeah. There could be a couple of options I'm just thinking of, Hamish, that we might have a look at and see whether that size of device or could fit into maybe some sort of monitoring box or something.
Yeah, you got those AF Insec monitor, the two-piece black put together units, something like that, with something that's got open sides all around it. I just want to think, could we put it in that? And then it obviously cause it to only work half as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's good. Yeah, thanks for that.
Could I just make a general comment, please, Mark? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, fire away. Yeah, sure.
There's been and a couple of people in Australia have recognised this opportunity already, but and you guys are probably doing this as part of your marketing plans. But in the States, I've learned that with this move to big box stores, there's been a lot of use of mating disruptors, even down to supermarket back end stores and maybe even parts of some supermarkets over there, the use of the CIDERAK product in particular. So look, sales have been growing and Globe have been the driver of that through their distribution network. It's like every product, it took a while to get established and then recognised. Now it's fully registered. And I'd just like to commend that it is a change of thinking, and the big advantage is you can use it. Initially, you don't need to change a thing with your client. In fact, we recommend that you look to improve performance by adding the disruptors, and then eventually you might modify the use of Pestigas. But look, you guys, or most of you guys would know all this, but it's just, I guess, an opportunity to reinforce the opportunity for those products.
Yeah. And there is a push for more of an integrated pest management approach, and this really kind of fits the bill when it comes to especially monitoring and being able to fix that, to be able to disrupt or fix that problem before it becomes a problem as well. So I think it's a great option for pest managers. That's cool. No problems. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll close out. We'll close out the training there today. Thanks for everyone coming along. Thanks to James, Darcy, and David for their support on this webinar. Anyone who, you'll get a copy of the webinar as well if you need to listen to it again. This will be the last one for the year. I think the next one for us will be beginning of the year. Maybe we haven't decided we'll do one the end of January or the end of February, but we'll get that invite out for the next one very soon, so we can keep that in the series. And we've got almost a full year planned of webinars for next year as well, so it's been quite popular. So thank you all for your attendance today. Thank you for your time for the rest of the year, and we'll see you next year. I say any of those deals that you want to do, we spoke about earlier, we can get them. You can order that through the branches today, and obviously all the Trece products that we talked about are obviously available around the country in our branches. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.